I saw Brian. There's Brian. He's right in front of me. Okay. Okay. In which case, I think everybody's here. So I am going to officially call to order this regular board meeting of the Truckee-Donner Public Utility District. It is 6 p.m. on Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. Shauna, could I get a roll call, please?
Yes, thank you. Director Aguera?
Here.
Director Bender?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Vice President Laliotis?
Here.
President Finn?
Here. Thank you, Shauna. We are going to defer the pledge this evening, which brings us to number 4, changes to the agenda. And I actually have a change that I'd like to make to the agenda. I would like to add a closed session this evening pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators. So the district negotiators are myself, President Finn, and board member Bender, and the unrepresented employee is the general manager. In order to add the session this evening, the board must find that this item came to the attention of the district after the agenda was posted, and it came to the attention of the district after we had our ad hoc negotiators committee meeting on Friday, and this agenda was posted on Thursday. And secondly, there's a need to take immediate action, which I believe exists because before the next regular board meeting, which would be in 2 weeks. And I think that need exists because we have to keep the negotiations moving forward to meet the target hire date for our new general manager to coincide with the extension of the term of the amendment to the employment agreement with the interim general manager. It's a lot of information, but
well done.
Thank you. Steve was very helpful. I love our counsel. So those are the grounds that I have, and the reason we need to have the closed session. So at this point, I was hoping to get a motion.
I concur and so moved, per President Finn.
I'll second
that. Thank you. And
pardon me, President Finn. And before you take a vote, you should accept public comment as well.
Oh, I apologize. Is there any public comment to this brand new item on the agenda that I sprang on people? Okay, I think that was a no, but Shauna, you are coming in and out.
Sorry. That is no, we do not have any.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there a 5? That covers all the bases. I keep the motion. Thank you for a second. If you could give a roll call vote.
Aguera?
What was that?
I think we're having...
taking a roll call vote. Is it me again?
I think so. Let's try again.
Okay, I'll give it one more shot. Director Aguera?
Here.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes. Very good. Thank you all for being patient here through this process. Let's see, public comment. This is time that is set aside for the public to comment on any matter that is not on the agenda. So testimony related to any agendized matter should be addressed at that time. So do we have any public comment this evening?
No, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Which brings us to our director update. Do any directors have an update they would like to share with us this evening? And you can raise your hand and I will be happy to call on you. Director Harris.
Hi, and welcome to my colleagues, friends, and neighbors to the board meeting. I just wanted to let you guys know that I attended a handful of community meetings this week, and there is a lot going on in the town of Truckee. So it's always good to be up to date with what's going on. I attended the Green Team meeting, the Truckee Tahoe Democrats meeting, and then a meeting today with Supervisor Harvey Bullock on basically Truckee visitation. So it was very interesting. And yeah, I was happy to be kind of the PUD representative, but hopefully our future general manager will be able to attend more of these types of community meetings because they're very informative and it's always good to get out there.
Right on. Thank you, Director Harris. It is always good to get out there. I agree. Do we have any other directors who would like to share anything with us tonight? Okay. Seeing none, I just really want to quickly take a minute in my comment and thank all the employees here at the district. This has been a really challenging year, like literally this from April to April has been a really challenging year, and our workplaces changed and our home life changed and roles and responsibilities continue to change. So I just really want to thank everybody for continuing to show up. You've maintained your focus and your fortitude and your good cheer. And I'm really grateful to all of you for helping us keep the lights on and the water flowing. So good job. Thank you. And that is my comment, which brings us to our general manager's update tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I have a few for you this evening. Wanted to start off with an update on the status of our water and electric deliveries here for 2021. In the first quarter, we've obviously had a lighter than usual or a lighter than normal snow or precipitation in the spring or the beginning of spring, end of winter. But we have noticed that the first quarter, we've had about an 8% increase year over year for electric deliveries or wholesale power purchases, and about 6% increase in water deliveries. So nothing significant or, of concern, but just tracking this also in kind of conjunction with some of the other data that's being collected in the community. As Director Harris talked about, the meetings and meeting of the mind, so to speak, on increases in population or occupancy or tourism for 2021. So there's something to take note of, in particular with some of the regulatory actions that are coming out of the state this summer. We're hearing, some information that's leading us to believe that there'll likely be some form of at least advisory drought considerations for water, just because of the low snowpack here in our local mountains. So as water usage increases over year to year, we also need to look at conservation opportunities. Kind of on the same note, we've had a couple of workshops here with the board and the community on our delinquent or past due accounts, primarily due to some of the economic impacts of COVID and some of the overall impacts to the district's collection of bills. And so good news is that in this last month, the 30-day and 60-day past dues have actually gone down, which is great news. It's the part that still remains a little bit of concern here for the district is that the 90-day hasn't. It continues to increase in terms of total dollar value, not necessarily the number of accounts. And so staff will be in the coming months here presenting some opportunities again for consideration on how to resolve those. Just as kind of a note, we did receive information from Liberty Energy that as of July 1st, they will return to collection of past due and re-implement late fees. So that's, I believe, pending the governor's, opening of the economy, so to speak, on June 15th. But it's something that other utilities in our region are definitely keeping track of and watching. The assistance program we have, the COVID-19 payment relief, is still in place. We still continue to have additional customers taking advantage of it or utilizing it. To date, we've had 335 customers utilize those funds for a grand total of about just over $100,000 in benefit there. So we still have funds available for qualifying customers, and we'll still continue to work with customers out there based on our kind of the case by case situations out there. We know that there's still some economic impact. But we're also excited, like everyone else is, I believe, to returning things back to more of a normal, the previous normal at least. Other updates we have is May is Electric Safety Month. So the board and the community can look for, with our staff, some engagement there. So Electrical Safety Month is important. We like to believe every month is Electrical Safety Month, but May is when it's celebrated. So take note of that. And then May 19th, we have the strategic plan. Staff will be presenting to this board for consideration, adoption of the strategic plan and the initiative. So exciting May for us, and we're looking forward to getting the summer underway.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. I was unaware of the Electrical Safety Month. So yeah, I'm excited to celebrate. And that brings us into our consent calendar this evening. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar?
No, Madam President.
Thank you, Shauna. Do any directors have something they want to pull or comment on the consent calendar?
Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions on two of the items. On item 10 or 11, I'm sorry, the vehicles, are we planning on phasing out the outsourcing of vehicle maintenance with the hiring of the new position?
Yes, that would be phased out over time. Predominantly, we're using the outsourcing component for some of the routine or scheduled maintenance of our fleet. And as we bring on a new mechanic staff, the need to use those outsources will fade away.
Great. And then maybe just a quick description on the bilingual pay, of what metric you're going to use to establish an employee's eligibility for that.
Yeah, I have Julian Stewart with us who can answer that. Go ahead, Julian.
Yeah, no problem. First, let me start by just saying good evening to you, Vice President Laliotis, President Finn, and other members of the board. It's nice to be here again this evening. But to answer your question, we have thought that through, and we have a couple of different criteria. It will first, the need, that specific skill set and need will be determined by department heads in partnership with myself as the HR manager to ensure that that skill set is needed for that position and for that department. And there's a substantial amount of workload where that bilingual pay and that work will be warranted. And then we will also be using a proficiency test to ensure that that skill set, that employee meets that skill set.
Great, thank you. That's all I have, Krista.
Thank you, Tony. Does anybody else have anything that they would? Okay, in which case, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Shauna, could we get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender.
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis.
Yes.
President Finn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. So that leads us to the first of our action items, item number 13. Consideration of scheduling 2 public hearings on the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And this involves adopting the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. Do we have any public comment on this item?
That one is not.
Uh-oh.
No, Madam President.
Thank you. I heard that. In which case, I believe we have Neil, talking us through this one.
Yes, I'm got a presentation prepared for the board here. Can everyone see that? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, President Finn and Board of Directors. This item is involving the scheduling of public hearings for the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. So I've got a few preliminary items to discuss, and then I'll kind of go through a brief overview of both documents. So the Urban Water Management Planning Act requires that all urban water suppliers prepare an urban water management plan and update it every 5 years. And an urban water supplier is defined as a supplier, either publicly or privately owned, providing water for municipal purposes, directly or indirectly, to more than 3,000 customers or supplying more than 3,000 acre feet annually. Now, the district qualifies under both criteria. We have about 13,300 water system customers, and we're currently delivering about 4,100 acre feet per year. That's our average for the past 5 years. So the purpose of the Urban Water Management Plan is to enable water suppliers long-term resource planning to ensure that adequate water supplies are available to meet existing and future water needs. And this does require some coordination communication with the local land use planning agencies. Our current urban water management plan was adopted in June of 2016, so 5 years ago, and we are required to adopt and submit our updated plan no later than July 1st of this year. Preparation of the urban water management plan is exempt from the CEQA process, but a public hearing is required. So outlined here is the anticipated schedule. Back in February of this year, we had an introductory workshop and we discussed some of our water usage, current and projected. This evening, May 5th, we're going to go through a review of both documents, the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, and we're recommending that the board schedule the public hearings for June 2nd. And we're anticipating that on June 2nd, we would conduct public hearings on both documents, and the adoption of both documents would follow. And then submittal of the Urban Water Management Plan to the Department of Water Resources would happen sometime in late June. So here we have an outline of the Urban Water Management Plan, 8 sections in total. And again, I'm going to go through each section briefly. And then there are some mandatory topics for discussion that are included in the document. Some of these don't necessarily apply to the district, but we are required to address them, if only briefly. So section 1 is an introduction. We go through and we identify that we're talking only about the Truckee water system, and there is anything related to Hirschdale is not included in the Urban Water Management Plan. We have a brief overview of the plan, a discussion of public participation, a discussion of interagency coordination between the district, the town, other local water suppliers such as North Star Community Services District, Placer County Water Agency, and then there's a discussion of the plan adoption process. Section 2 is a discussion of the service area, a brief overview of the water service history of the district here in Truckee. There's some overview maps, and then a discussion of current and projected population. In terms of current population, we are utilizing information from the Department of Finance that was published in January. It was data for January of 2020 that was published in May of 2020. And based on that information, there's a permanent population in Truckee of 16,228. We are looking at 2.46 persons per household for the full-time occupied properties, and we have a 51% vacancy rate. Now, all of the, quote, second homes and vacation homes fall into that vacancy category. So the reality of, houses actually on the market is a significantly smaller number than that. Now, there is no official published data to determine actual occupancy of all of these second homes or vacation homes on any given day. So the reality is the actual number of people served by the district on any given day is likely to be much higher than this official 16,228 number. Now, in addition, I think as everybody is aware, that we do have some evidence of a short-term increase in the permanent population due to the COVID economic disruptions. We really don't know if that's going to be a long-term impact that we'll continue to experience for a number of years. But we'll just have to wait and see in that area. And we are expecting new Department of Finance data to be published later on this month, but that's not going to be able to be included in this urban water management plan update. So we are looking at the data from last year. Now, in this graph, there's two things really to identify with. This is historic and projected population, historic dating back to 1980 and projected forward through 2040. One thing to notice is that for the past 10 years, the official permanent population in Truckee has been essentially flat, a little over 16,000 residents, and that's been basically unchanged. Now, we have two officially published population projections that we're looking at. The upper line is based on information that was in the town's official general plan, which was published back in 2006. And at that time, the town published an anticipated growth rate of 2% per year. You can see that's pretty much what we were experiencing in the 2000 to 2010 period. However, as we hit 2010, we did level off significantly. More recently, in 2019, the town had a new study performed, and that identified or projected a 0.6% population increase going forward. And so both of those projections are shown here on the graph. And again, neither one of these projections takes into account any issues related to the COVID economic disruption that we've experienced over the past year. Section 3 gives a brief description of the existing water system facilities. They're listed here: 10 active wells, potable water wells, 3 active non-potable water wells supplying irrigation water and construction water. We have 5 inactive wells, 25 pumping stations, 35 storage tanks, 3 of which are inactive. However, we do have a replacement project that will bring one of those storage tanks back into service, 41 control valve stations, and about 220 miles of pipeline. Section 4 discusses the system water use. Again, some of this we discussed back in February. For 2020, the average day demand was a little over 4 million gallons per day. The maximum day demand was a little over 7 million gallons per day. We then have projected water usage going forward for the next 20 years. And we have our build-out usage projections of about 7.5 million gallons per day average and a little over 16 million gallons per day on the maximum day. Again, historic graph of historic water usage. We had our peak back in 2007, and we've been on a generally downward trend since then. We did have a bump in 2020. And again, we're waiting to see if that's going to be a long-term impact or if that's going to ameliorate a little bit as the COVID economic disruptions are relaxed. Again, summarized 2020 potable water usage. About half the water goes to the single-family residences, and then we have a few other categories, and we do have a significant percentage that does end up as non-revenue water. There is a discussion of recycled water. This is required by the state. The reality of our local situation is that recycled water will not be used due to some parameters of the Truckee River operating agreement. And even if recycled water was allowed, we really don't need it because we do have adequate groundwater supplies to serve our current and future needs. There is also a discussion of non-revenue water and a discussion of water demand for low-income housing. And the water demand for low-income housing is included in all of the information I just provided previously. Section 5 deals with SBX 7-7 compliance. That regulation is also known as the Water Conservation Act of 2009. That required a 20% reduction in urban water usage by the year 2020. When you go through the procedures associated with the Act, our baseline usage was calculated at 407 gallons per capita per day. Our target usage for 2020 was 326 gallons per capita per day, and our actual usage was 289 gallons per capita per day. So we saw a 29% reduction, and we are in compliance with SBX 7-7. Now, again, one thing to consider when you're looking at these numbers, these are based on the official permanent population as published by the Department of Finance, and they do not include any allowance for the part-time occupied properties. Section 6 discusses our system water supplies. Our current water supply is groundwater from the Martis Valley Groundwater Basin. There's been a number of studies reviewing the basin and the hydrology, and we've pretty much determined that the sustainable yield of the basin is at least 22,000 acre feet per year, and there's a total storage volume in the basin of at least 484,000 acre feet. Now, historically, there was some surface water use from Donner Lake associated with the Donner Lake water system. Prior to the district acquisition of the water system out there, they were using surface water. We are currently serving the Donner Lake area with groundwater, but the district does maintain 990 acre feet per year of water rights from Donner Lake. In 2020 withdrawals from the groundwater basin, the district was about 5,200 acre feet. Other users were a little over 3,000 acre feet. So we're looking at almost 8,300 acre feet total for the year, again, compared to our sustainable yield of 22,000. At build out, we're projecting the district at about 8,300, other users at about 5,000, little over 13,000 acre feet per year, and that's about 60% of the sustainable yield of the basin. So we are confident that we will have sufficient water supply going forward into the future from the groundwater basin. Again, additional well supplies additional water supplies are not needed. We will need to construct some additional well capacity at some point in the future, and the timing of that will be based upon the growth in water usage. Within Section 6, there is also a discussion of water system energy usage, and that is a required component. Section 7 discusses the water shortage contingency planning. Our existing water shortage contingency plan was adopted in 2014. New significant revisions are required, and the new water shortage contingency plan needs to be adopted by a separate board action. I will go into the water shortage contingency plan in a little more detail in a few slides. Now, in general, the district does have sufficient water supply and storage within the groundwater basin to withstand a multiple-year drought, as we just indicated. So the most likely cause of a water shortage is the failure of a critical facility due to fire, earthquake, flood, or similar event. Within Section 7, there is also a discussion of the potential financial impact of a water shortage. Section 8 discusses water demand management measures, also known as water conservation measures. There's a few that we've outlined here: water waste prevention ordinances, metering, conservation pricing, public education and outreach, programs to manage our distribution system losses, our non-revenue water. There's a discussion of staffing, other demand management measures, such as some of our rebate programs, audit programs, and the demand management measure effectiveness. So in terms of the water shortage contingency plan, there are 12 required sections, and I'm just going to briefly list them here. There's a water supply reliability analysis, an annual water supply and demand assessment procedure. There are 6 standard water shortage stages, and this was done by the state so that everybody is talking about the same level of reductions if someone declares a stage 3 water shortage, whereas with the previous requirements, they were somewhat flexible and different water purveyors had adopted different levels for different stages. There's a discussion of water shortage response actions, communication protocols, compliance and enforcement, legal authorities, the financial consequences of the water shortage contingency plan, monitoring and reporting, water shortage contingency plan refinement procedures, a special water feature distinction. And this is something that's required by the state, and it's basically an acknowledgement that ornamental water features such as fountains and things of that nature should be treated differently than spas or pools or things that are require human contact and therefore require potable water. And then the final item in there is a discussion of the plan adoption procedures, the submittal, and the public availability of the plan. So there is no direct fiscal impact associated with this item. And the recommendation before you is to schedule 2 public hearings, one of which to receive comment on the draft urban water management plan, and the second of which to receive comment on the draft water shortage contingency plan. And at this point, I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you so much, Neil. And you know what? I feel like I got the cart in front of the horse a little bit when I asked for public comment before this presentation, because you gave us so much information. So I'm going to go ahead and ask if there's any public comment again, now that people have had a chance to go through that with us.
No, Madam President.
Thank you. And now I shall open it up to the board. If anybody has any questions or comments for Neil this evening. And yes, Director Harris, I see your hand. Please.
Hi, Neil. Thank you so much. I know this document is about 350 pages, but I appreciate your kind of summation of all of, the parts of it and helping us understand that. I'm sure as we kind of get through and start getting more into the public hearings for it and everything, there will probably be more questions coming up. But thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, I have a question for Neil. Neil, did you say that our sustainable water supply is good for maybe 20 years?
No. The available water supply from the groundwater basin, we believe, is going to be sufficient for build out. Now, if we start looking at the 20-year time frame, based on current growth, we do believe that we might be needing to construct some additional wells in the 15 to 20-year time frame. But we do have sufficient water underground to supply those wells.
Thank you. That's good. And that's quite a report you got here. When I first saw it, I says, oh my gosh, how am I going to read that in a couple of days? I was assured that you were going to summarize it for us. I sure appreciate it. Thank you very much. And that's a lot of work in this report. Thanks again.
Krista, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can anyone hear me? Okay. Neil, can you go back to the slide where you had the percentage at build out and then you had the total supply before that?
This one here?
Yeah. So, okay. I missed the other users. So I'm assuming, so that's North Star and the Martis Valley groundwater system, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct. So that would be North Star Community Services District, both of their service areas, their original one, plus the area they've acquired from PCWA. That would also include private wells and some of the larger private users. There's some of the golf courses operate their own independent wells. And then you were also looking at the concrete plant here in Truckee, the asphalt plant. So there are a few other private entities that operate their own wells independent of a public water supplier.
No, great. Thanks. I missed that bullet of the other users. So thank you very much. And no, I appreciate, as Kim said, this is a 300-page document, but you did a great job of summarizing the sort of the nuts and bolts for us and giving us some of the highlights. So I appreciate all your hard work and effort. And you are doing this in-house, I assume, as you've done in the past?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And I just want to recognize that, because I would say that most agencies our size farm this out to consultants. So Neil taking it on in-house is not only a matter of efficiency, but his ability to disseminate our water system information into these regulatory documents, which is not fun sometimes. So I appreciate that. And everyone who pitched in on getting this work done, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Neil. A lot of work. Good teamwork there, putting that together. And so I have a question on figure 3.3. There's just when I wander around on my bicycle, there's a tank right above the Tanini Springs. So is that an old inactive PUD tank, or is that someone else's?
The one above Tanini Springs doesn't even show up on this inactive list. That is, I'll call that under the category of abandoned. And yes, that is a district facility.
Got it. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you very much.
Okay, which brings it back to me. echoing what other directors have said, this was a really juicy document. You gave us everything that we could lay our hands on. I feel very well prepared to answer any water questions coming forward, not off the top of my head, but because I have this now on my device. The couple of things that I was thinking about as I read it was the section on recycled water. I actually found that to be a little bit confusing. It was, I'm one of those old-fashioned conservation people who you automatically think recycling, we should be doing that. But clearly, we shouldn't be doing that. And that's because of the Truckee River operating agreement. Could you just talk about that just a little bit, just briefly, of why that is? Why does that exist in that way, that we shouldn't use recycled water?
All right. So within the Truckee River operating agreement, there's a discussion of wastewater disposal. And within that, and a lot of it deals with the treatment plant here in town operated by the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency. And essentially, as you get into the details, what it says is that we are not allowed to reduce the return flows to the river from the water treated by the wastewater treatment plant. And effectively, that's what recycled water would be. Is right now, all of the water treated by the wastewater plant is disposed of through spreading basins and injection wells, and then it makes its way back into the Truckee River. And if we go through and implemented a recycled water system, we would be reducing that return flow, because that water would end up, instead of going back to the river, would end up being used for irrigation of whatever.
So even though we don't get water from the river, we get it all from the Martis Valley groundwater basin. So it's not coming from the river, but it's all has to go back to the river.
The wastewater treatment plant return flows have to go back to the river. Now, one other thing to consider is that a recycled water system, would potentially, well, actually, it certainly would require additional treatment above and beyond what's already being done at the wastewater treatment plant if it was going to be brought to a higher level use. The other thing is you would have to be constructing a completely independent distribution system to move that water from what is essentially the lowest point of town. So the reality is, even if we had the ability to use that water, and even if we had the need to use that water, that would be our most expensive water. So there's a few different criteria that, really don't make it favorable.
Got it. Yeah, it was confusing me to get to it comes out of the basin, goes into the river, but it's the whole ecosystem situation. and it's not as expensive as desalinization, which I noticed you pointed out also in the report. Something else we decided not to pursue. So,
and again, that's one of those things that the state requires us to discuss, if only briefly. I've had that discussion with them before. I'm 200 miles away from the ocean, and I've got 10,000-foot mountains in between. Do I really need to discuss this issue? And the answer from them is, yes, we have to discuss it.
Oh, it made me smile that your sentence towards desalinization. So thank you. And you know what? I think I'm good. There was so much information, and I thought it was really interesting. And just for the board's consideration and our thinking moving forward. Rem at one point talked about managing the watershed in a holistic way, which, it's just a sentence, but what does that sentence mean? I mean, clearly with all this information, we are obviously paying very close attention to our water. And that is always, I think, of the most importance when you bring a question like that. What is holistic care? First is to know what the data is and what our ecosystem looks like and what our water looks like. But moving forward, just for the board to consider that idea and what they think that should look like or does look like. Are we already doing that? Are there more things that we might want to consider? How does that branch out into our community and our ecosystem, caring for our wildlands, for example, restoring wetlands? We know that nature does a lot of work for us, all for free. And it's just to plant that seed as we think about our water system and the care that we are taking with it, which I think is quite tremendous. So we're at a really good place, and it's a good moment to think about moving the conversation forward and making life easier for the people that are going to be sitting in these seats in, say, 30 years. They're going to be looking at a slightly different world than we're looking at now. And so again, I just want us to, as a board, think about these things and see what we can come up with. So that's all I have. But thank you so much, Neil. You did a really wonderful job of condensing a lot of information for us and giving us a lot of historical perspective as well. This is a very intensely scrutinized basin, and it was nice to have all of that dropped into my lap that way. I do feel much more confident in my responses to to constituents about water. So thank you. Anything else? Did any of that spark anything? Would anybody like to add anything? Or can we, again, entertain a motion to schedule some public hearings?
I will move to schedule a public hearing to receive public comment on the draft urban water management plan for 6 p.m. or soon thereafter on June 2nd, 2021, and schedule a public hearing to receive public comment on the draft water shortage contingency plan for 6 p.m. or soon thereafter on June 2nd, 2021.
I'll second.
Thank you. Shauna, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Thank you, Director Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all involved. Very good. Which rolls us into action item number 14. Consideration of the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Agency budget. And this item involves the district's participation of funding for the housing JPA. And I believe we have a couple of presenters with us this evening. Ethan, I see Emily.
Yes. Good evening, President Finn and members of the board. This is action item 14, and I do have with me Emily Vitus. She's the executive director of the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency, and as the district's representative on that board for the last year, I will say she does an excellent job, and I'm happy to have her here, and I think she'll give a very informative update. My portion of the presentation is regards to the budget. And so I will go ahead and share my screen.
Can
you guys see that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and then I will do, so action item 14 again. So employee access to achievable local housing is a long-term issue. It deals with recruitment and retention. There's also a need for short-term housing in some cases. And the district has been active in this field as a participant in the Mountain Housing Council for their first version, Mountain Housing Council 1.0. Starting in 2018, the district began exploring opportunities to collaborate with local agencies to seek innovative solutions to a problem we all have, which is recruitment and retention. How do we get our employees who want to live here to be able to live here? So that's the district, the Tahoe Forest Hospital District, the Tahoe Unified School District, and the Truckee Tahoe Airport District. The 4 member agencies decided to form the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency, TTWHA. And that is a joint powers authority for housing with a very specific mission to address those recruitment and retention and housing problems that we all know exist. On October 3rd, 2019, the district board took action to authorize the formation of the TTWA along with similar actions by our partners. Since then, we have spent the last year really working hard to develop and build capacity, understand the housing situation, and we did present the employee housing survey that each agency conducted collaboratively, which really better defined the need and some of the things we were working on, and we're also serving our customers. And so at this point, I'm going to pass it to Emily Vitus to give an update on what we've been doing.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Good evening, President Finn and members of the board. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for having me this evening, and thank you again for your participation in the agency, your willingness to approach our housing situation with an innovative solution. It's much appreciated, and it's been a pretty exciting year for us. So it's been 6 months since we met last. In that time, we have seen some pretty major shifts in housing accessibility and affordability in our region. Fortunately, the Public Utility District and your member agency partners had already taken action to address future housing concerns by founding the Workforce Housing Agency, and that has resulted in a year of accomplishments that I'm excited to share today. So I want to present today to share what we've accomplished since our founding, what we're working on currently, what the future of housing activities through the Workforce Housing Agency looks like. And before I move into talking through those housing agent activities, I do want to share the next slide and talk with you about the state of housing in Tahoe Truckee right now. So we'll give us a few seconds to take a look at this slide and kind of let the numbers sink in. You know, we're all hearing the stories and reading the articles, but seeing the comparison from when I started tracking these numbers almost a year ago now to now is fairly astounding. You know, every few days we're seeing a Truckee Tahoe People post about another family, losing their housing. Locals are losing their rentals at an alarming rate. You know, the hospital shared with me recently that 2 of their employees were looking to purchase a home in Reno, and two doctors have funds to do so. They were asking or offering over asking price, and they still couldn't purchase a home in Reno. So it's not just the Truckee Tahoe region. You're seeing it kind of leaking out to our other regions as well. Additionally, landing locals, we have a housing match program, was shared with me recently that a quarter of the employees in their pipeline right now are in that pipeline because they're being displaced due to the owners of their home selling or moving into the homes full time. So our housing efforts to keep our employees in long-term stable housing close to where they work, if that's where they choose to be or where they'd like to be, has really never been more important. Next slide, please. Thanks, Stephen. So 6 months ago, Wendy Sullivan and I came and presented to you and shared an overview of the recently completed Workforce Housing Needs Assessment. We shared some pretty concerning statistics then that had all of us shaking our heads during our conversation, I remember. And I'm placing a couple of these statistics up here on the screen again today, just as a reminder why we're here, why our work is so important. And you'll notice later in the presentation that PUD employee needs and participation through the housing agency so far has been somewhat mild compared to some of our other agencies. But what I'm seeing is that every district is so different, and for the PUD, really the numbers that I think we need to be focused on are these first 2 percentages here. You know, percentage of employees considering leaving employment in part due to housing, and then the percentage of employees planning to retire in the next 5 years. The PUD's number is much higher than the rest of our member agencies' numbers. While your employees are kind of in the most stable housing situations out of all of our agencies, those two numbers, represent almost a third of employees that could potentially be gone in the next 5 years. And then replacing those employees looks very, very different than when you hired them 10 or 20 years ago. The ability to access housing is much different now than it was then. Next slide. So the Employee Housing Needs Survey wasn't just, upsetting dire statistics and data. It actually presented a number of possible paths that we could move down or may take on this housing journey. And your employees told us what was important to them in that survey, how much they could afford, where they want to live, what kind of housing they want. And my board took the 20 plus options presented by both the employees and Wendy Sullivan, the consultant, and worked to create a 5-year housing work plan that could help guide us through this work. Next slide. So we developed a 5-year housing work plan in October of 2020, completed in December of 2020. And the 3 areas I've included here are kind of areas that we have chosen to focus on. So when we were talking about focus areas, we asked, how do we secure housing that we can control and provide to our employees, no matter what the market looks like, what the levels of displacement are? How can we expand the programs we're already administering and build others to respond to employee needs? And then finally, are there any other non-housing related opportunities that could help ease the burden of housing costs for our employees? So these are the areas that we kind of chose to focus on and hopefully impact in the coming years. We established fairly conservative targets for the work plan, knowing that we're still new, building our foundation. But if we could get to a place where in 5 years, we're actively supporting 10% of our employees, also working with regional partners to move their housing programs and opportunities forward, that really does feel like a big win. Next slide, Stephen. So this is a listing of the housing plan activities that are included in our 2021 through 25 housing work plan. I am going to speak to each of these briefly, though I will be coming back to some of them further in the presentation. We are working on the development of workforce housing. We're currently completing a land mapping exercise to identify all of the parcels owned by our member agencies and further identify if there are any of those parcels that are available for workforce housing development. We are currently building a master leasing program in hopes that we can lease larger blocks of units for long-term use, but also some of those short-term needs that the Public Utility District has for weather-related events for some of your employees. The Employee Concierge Program is kind of just a fancy way of saying that we're acting as an outlet for all things housing for our employees. And I'm hearing from employees on a weekly basis on a variety of housing-related questions and issues, and we can be the place that employees go when they're searching for somewhere to live or looking to understand housing opportunities available to them. The Housing Match program is with Landing Locals, and it connects our employees with second homeowners looking to lease their homes long-term. So we're almost on a year of that program, which I'll give a bit of an update on here shortly. And the fifth bullet, almost 40% of our employees ask for housing education opportunities. How can they access down payment assistance? How can they calculate a mortgage that they can actually afford? A number of questions that our employees maybe don't have the time or resources to actually, research and understand. We can help them with that. In addition, we have a number of existing homeowners whose home situations have them, looking to leave or have them less than satisfied with their housing. Can we help them to access loan products or rebate programs to improve their living situations? And then finally, we have a unique opportunity as a joint powers authority to work together on solutions for issues that each of our agencies face that directly impact employees' ability to afford and access housing. So can our member agencies come together to explore some of these areas that are a little bit outside of the housing space, but could greatly affect how our employees afford housing? Thanks, Stephen. So that brings us to our 1-year report. It's been a challenging year, but it's also been a year of progress for the housing agency. You know, we're building something that no one else has, and that takes time, resources, creativity, and commitment. In our first few months, we're committed to founding, as I reported in my 6-month update last time I presented. But while completing those activities, we were able to execute a few housing-related initiatives. You know, the Employee Concierge Program, the Housing Match Program, and then the housing work plan being developed between October and December. And then finally, the progress we've made in relationship building and cultivation is resulting in some really great collaborations throughout the region. So we're talking with the town and the county on a weekly basis about opportunities we can pursue together. I'm meeting with developers to understand, you know, what's coming down the pipeline. Are there master leasing opportunities? And additionally, working with developers to cultivate relationships when we do get to that place where we're ready to develop, hopefully on member agency owned land. Next slide, thank you. So this table represents interactions and housing successes we've achieved in the last 9 months when we started our, to really focus on housing specific activities. So I'll talk to each of these briefly. On the employee concierge piece, the number you see here represents those employees that I've connected to and the housing agency has been a resource for. So we don't know how many of these employees have accessed housing right now. I am planning on doing a 1-year survey to these employees so we have more specific data. On the Housing Match Program, we have actually connected 9 local employees and their families with long-term homes through the Housing Match Program. That is a program with Landing Locals. And that's a program that we are hoping to extend and possibly build upon the next fiscal year with a incentive program similar to the Town of Truckee's program. On the housing purchase, an exciting story. A few weeks ago, in partnership with the town, we learned of a deed-restricted house that had come available for sale. We were able to advertise it to our employees before it had kind of hit the greater public. And as a result of our kind of our quick efforts, the top 2 applicants were employees of our member agencies, and the gentleman who purchased the home is an employee of the airport. And their HR director called me that day and said she had just seen him in the parking lot and he was shaking with excitement. He's been looking for housing for a long time. I've been working with him for a year. He had moved down to Reno because he lost his home in Truckee, and now he's able to buy a home in Truckee. So this one is pretty big. I mean, it's a proof of concept or a story that is really exciting, because when we can help employees purchase homes, we can ensure longevity and hopefully ensure less turnover, higher rates of satisfaction among our employees. The Hopkins Village project currently has a qualified buyers list of about 20. 5 to 6 of that list are our employees. We have worked hard to share this project with our employees, and as a result, we're hoping that those 5 or 6 will have an opportunity to buy a home in a region that they never thought that they could afford in. So that's pretty exciting as well. So in the last 9 months, we have helped over 80 employees and their families or partners on their housing journeys. And 10 of those employees, or actually 11, most of whom include families, are now in long-term housing solutions because of our efforts. And hopefully in the next few months, we'll see those 5 to 6 at Hopkins have an opportunity to purchase. So as you saw 2 slides back, our goal was to help 17 employees get into homes in the 2021 calendar year, and we will likely be there by July of this year, which is very exciting. So this is not so much what's next, but more, what are we working on now? So each of these items I've touched upon briefly already. The fourth I have not touched upon yet, and that is that our board is currently exploring expanding our membership base to include the town of Truckee, Placer County, and Nevada County to help further increase resources, partnering opportunities, and to serve the employees of these agencies who are facing very similar issues to those of our 4 founding member agencies. So our board will be discussing that at the May board meeting, and we have been engaging in discussions and working with a consultant to best understand if that's a path that we want to take over the last few months. And then finally, our member contributions. So we did share a draft budget with you in your board packet, and our member contributions are calculated based on the numbers of employees each agency represents. And what's nice is if you compare your employee counts with the number of employees that we've served so far in that table I showed you a few slides back, the percentages are showing almost even, which feels good as you see kind of pretty big differences in some of these numbers. And tonight I'm here to give you an update, but also to ask that you consider continuing to support our efforts to bring housing solutions to the community and your employees through the member contributions shown here. So I want to thank you for recognizing the issue, participating as a founding member agency, and look forward to questions and conversation after Stephen is complete with his presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. And there will be opportunities for questions. To finish real quickly, for the district, our next steps are to consider approval of the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency July 1, 21 to June 30, 22 budget, and to continue to develop the programs and services. And so, do the board and staff support that, this agency needs to be successful, and, the collaboration amongst the founding 4 member agencies against, again, the school, the hospital, the town, and the airport, and then continue discussion with potential new agency members. And, those discussions have been rich because while the entitlement agencies, the counties and the town kind of already have a mandate to do that, and we don't want that to interfere with the mandate of this JPA, when it comes to housing their employees, they look just like us. And so our consultants have been pretty clear that they bring resources, capacity. There's probably a lot of good reasons to bring them on, and we're having those discussions. So in terms of fiscal impact, the district's allocated portion of the TTWHA July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2022 budget is $14,688. And again, that's allocated based on budgeted headcount plus a factor for contract employees. We didn't have any, so it didn't change our number, but the airport and the school in particular did have some contract employees who they want to house here for operations, emergency response, and other issues. And sufficient funds exist in the district's FY21 electric and water general fund for the initial expense, and projected FY22 and 23 expenses will be included in future district budgets for consideration. And the recommendation is to A, authorize the district's representative or alternate to the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency, TTWHA, board to approve the TTWHA July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022 budget, and B, approve the district's contribution of $14,688 for 2021-2022 fiscal year. I'd be happy, and Emily would, to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Emily, very much for giving us this update and this presentation. Do we have any public comment on this item this evening?
No, Madam President.
Thank you, Shauna. In which case, I'm going to open it up to the board. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? And we'll look for raised hands again, but I can't see everybody at the same time.
All right.
I'll pipe in. I just wanted to thank Stephen and Emily for your presentation. I know housing has been a challenge, and it's on the town council's list of goals and everything. And I just appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, trying to get housing for the local workers, because it is a challenge when, on our street, there's a 2-bedroom house going for $875,000, and I'm not sure how somebody in the local workforce would be able to afford something like that. But there are other options, and I do appreciate the work that you guys are doing. And I had asked Brian what this number was based on, the 14,688, and I guess it's basically the full-time equivalents or something similar. If there's any ever an opportunity for the Truckee Donner PUD board to offer additional funds towards this, I would be up for something like that. So just saying. So, but thank you, Emily and Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Harris. If any other directors would like to add something, like I said, I can't see everybody at the same time, so.
Yeah, Chris says, Tony. No, just a quick thank you to everyone involved in this program, and Emily and Stephen specifically tonight. I know that this has become more of a challenge. The chase has gotten even harder in the last year. So I do appreciate the tenacity of this group and the partnerships we've developed and will continue to foster over the next at least 1 year, and hopefully looking forward. And thank you, Emily, for sharing some of the success of what's been going on. It's valuable for us to continue to hear what's going on, so that we know that what we're spending has value to the community and is meeting the goals and missions of your organization and keeping our employees as close to home as possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, so I ditto all that. A lot of work, and the housing market is pretty insane. And so it's nice. I'm glad we did this and very happy to continue it. I do have a question. Who are some new agencies that you all are looking at bringing on board?
So the initial discussions, and we were approached is with the town, Placer County, and Nevada County. And obviously they're all three heavily in the housing game. And we've had the discussions about, how does your mission and our mission, how's it complementary? How might it overlap in a way that's not helpful? And the message we've heard back is you have created a new tool that we would like to add to our tool chest. And when it comes, like I said before, to the hundreds of employees those three agencies represent, they do have the exact same recruitment and retention issues that we have. So it starts there. Director Bender, how many special districts we have in our community. And the statement I just made about when it comes to recruitment and retention, they look just like us, is valid. Our point is, we've pushed them off a little bit to allow us to do the time to establish the capacity and the programs and the direction before we start complicating, adding memberships and governance. And I think the board's interested in this 3, and then we'd probably pause again and wait a little while and, see how that goes. So I see an incremental evolution of this organization.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Director Aguero, would you like to say anything?
Other than I'm glad we got into this when we did, and we're part of these. It's kind of a hard progress because the housing market went like out of sight this last year. You think you have your house sold for something, and then a new buyer shows up and pays you more money, and so that keeps the prices right up on top of the world. And I'm glad we're part of it, and we're making some kind of impact on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm going to echo those sentiments. I was very interested and heartened to see the specific programs that you all are coming up with. I remember when this first came before the board, it was a little bit of a stretch for us, and for, staff brought it to us, and it was definitely sort of outside of our usual considerations. I'm really glad that we decided to participate as founding members, because I think the work is really bearing fruit, and very creatively at that. And I'm looking forward to the next 5 years. Those were some sobering statistics. We do have a lot of people retiring. And I don't want 20% more of our workforce on top of the 50% that already live in Reno. I just think that's not, as all of our districts know, that's not a tenable position. You can't really run a business if you don't have any employees. I think we absolutely need to continue to pursue this JPA, this really awesome, creative, new tool in the toolbox. So well done for creating something out of nothing. And I think this is going to be a good blueprint going forward for other sticky problems that our community faces. So thank you both very much for the presentation. I'm excited at the progress you've made, and look forward to continuing to make progress. So thank you. I guess that brings us to, there we are. Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Tony. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Shauna, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Bender? President Fenn, I'm sorry.
Yes. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Which brings us to item number 15 on our agenda tonight, a workshop about the 2020 Water Utility Consumer Confidence Reports. Let's settle in for our workshop.
Thank you, President Finn. I'm going to be doing the presentation on behalf of Earl Smith. He couldn't be here this evening. He is our water operations manager that would typically be doing this presentation, but I'm happy to report this will be an easy and positive reflection on the water quality here in Truckee. So let me share my screen. Okay, let me go to presentation mode. So this is workshop item number 15, the 2020 Consumer Confidence Reports. So this will be familiar to most of you. Each year, the district presents a consumer confidence report. This is a requirement out of the 1996 Amendment to the Safe Drinking Water Act, requiring systems to deliver this report each year to all of the consumers that we serve. The report has a couple of baseline requirements, providing information on our source water, a list of detected contaminants, and a brief description of our sources of contamination and the associated risk with them. It also requires that we report out any compliance issues or lack thereof, so to speak, with regulatory agencies. As you may recall, the district does provide two separate reports, one for the Truckee main system and one for the Hurstdale system. The Hurstdale system is a separate water utility in terms of reporting. It has its own California state water permit, so it requires its own report. And then the state board requires that each year this report be provided to our customers no later than July 1st. One of the good things to come out of the last couple of years in terms of changes to this report is, if you recall, back in 2012, the state board created a new provision that we didn't have to print these out and deliver them via mail to each consumer, but we could provide it access to this report through a one-click web portal. And that's what we've done for the last several years. It's worked out well, saved the district a lot of money in terms of printing and postage. And for those consumers or ratepayers who wish to have an actual hard copy, we can make that available here at our district office upon request. Both the Hurstdale and the Truckee main system reports have been generated and provided to the State Water Board for approval. I'm very happy to report on behalf of the staff and the district and this board that there were no reportable violations over the MCL or the maximum contaminant levels for any of the regulated contaminants identified by both the state and the federal EPA. And customers will be notified of the upcoming report it may even appear in their May bills, but it will at the latest appear in their June monthly water bill, and it'll give some instructions on where to access that. And as I mentioned, printed copies will be made available for those who prefer that format. So typically, the staff doesn't go through each of the reports, but this is a workshop, and it's been a while since we've actually reviewed the reports. They are the same in terms of format and structure each year, but I just wanted to quickly go through and point out a couple of things for either the community or the board to look through as this report becomes available to the public. So the structure of it is on the left, you'll see the list of contaminant or water quality feature or condition that we have to report on. And there are a couple different main categories. There are regulated primary contaminants, there are secondary regulated contaminants, and then there are unregulated contaminants. And I'll go through some of these and what their impacts and what concerns there are associated with them. The big one that we sample weekly very extensively throughout the year is total coliform bacteria. This total coliform is a indicator organism for what we refer to as E. coli or fecal E. coli. Coliform bacteria in itself isn't dangerous, doesn't provide a health risk, but it is an indicator of potentially other more significant risks. And so what we have to report is any positives, in particular if it's beyond 5% of our total sample collection. And as you can see, there's 0 there. We're very proud of the local clean, cold water here in Truckee. We do provide a small chlorine residual that you'll see in the next line down. The MCL for that is 4, but if you notice where we keep ours is at 0.35. It's very small in the public water system world. It's a very small residual, and the reason why we can do that is because you see up above, we don't have the bacterial constituents that other agencies may have to worry about. And so we can keep the water safe and hopefully mitigate some of the bad taste and odor associated with high chlorine levels in other utilities. Lead and copper, I'll point out real quick, is one that has been in the past, of high visibility. I'm very happy also to report that we've gone through extensive testing. We continue to manage a lead and copper program. There are no exceedances in our system. And if you will recall, in 2018, the state added a component where we had to test the schools or assist the school districts in testing, and we had no issues with the schools as well. So lead and copper is typically an issue associated with aggressive water, and we do not have that here in the Truckee Basin, the Martis Valley. It is also a contaminant that's typically associated with internal residential plumbing or internal commercial plumbing, and happy to say that we didn't have anything pop up of any concern here in our service territory. Secondary contaminants, or the second half of this table, these are really contaminants or constituents within the water that create some aesthetic challenges, and they are regulated, but they're secondary. They don't create primary or acute health hazards. They're typically things that cause either trouble with our plumbing systems or taste and aesthetic issues. We do get calls from our local breweries, for example, on things like pH and total dissolved solids, because it's a contaminant, so to speak, that has impact on their operations. But everything is within the threshold of potable drinking water by state standards. Again, some more unregulated components. Again, these are things that we're required to monitor, but they don't have a regulatory threshold. So the MCL there with NA, or the public health goal with NA, means that there simply, at this point, is not a reporting threshold. We're just required to note that we test for it, and that information is available to the public if one of these things are of concern. The calcium and magnesium, for example, are contributors to hard water, or the scaling that you have in your hot water systems, perhaps. Some inorganic compounds that are of high concern in most utilities or most public water systems that we are not in the threshold of reporting or having to take action on. Arsenic, we've done some workshops in the past, and perhaps at the board's pleasure, we revisit that for new residents or just to revisit our own education on it. Arsenic is naturally occurring here in the Martis Valley Basin and essentially in the Sierra Nevada. It's closely tied to volcanic or granite-based geology, and so we definitely have a lot of that here in our basin and in our area. So arsenic occurs naturally in our groundwater. It is below the maximum contaminant level. That level was raised a few years back from 50 parts per billion to 10, and that created some issues for many utilities. Luckily for us here in this community, we're still below the threshold. We do have some wells that kind of flirt back and forth with the threshold, but we operate those through a state-approved blending program. So we don't actually do treatment or removal in our Truckee main system. We do have some blending, so that basically we're blending some wells with higher concentrations with those that have lower concentrations, so the final delivery, or final product, is a low concentration water. We do have a benefit and luxury of doing that, and so that's very advantageous for us because it actually helps reduce the health risk and the cost of operation. A couple other components there. Chromium is one of the, if you remember the Aaron Brockovich story of chromium 6, hexavalent chromium, that's that constituent that naturally occurs. We don't have an issue here locally with that. A couple of more. Turbidity is basically particulate in the water, kind of non-health concerning particulate. There is a threshold for it. That is really an aesthetic, but we're doing well that here. Locally, we're well below the threshold in terms of reporting or action. And then we did a pretty good workshop about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, on radioactive contaminants. Another thing that is relatively tied to kind of our geology here, the decomposition of minerals in our granite and volcanic rock structure creates some radioactivity, but in terms of our water, it is not particularly an issue here. It's probably more likely to be something that's conveyed through the air rather than water here locally here in Truckee. And then finally, this is a question that pops up quite often. It is within our report, and as I mentioned, this is something that aesthetically or just kind of operationally impacts folks here in the community. Water hardness is, as I mentioned, the components of calcium and magnesium. It typically is precipitated at a higher rate in hot water systems, or if, I mentioned brewing or other activities with water, you can see that come up. Truckee, our system, is in that moderately hard range. Typically, I would say generally speaking, it isn't at the action level where folks are going to add softeners, but for those who are sensitive to it or have plumbing that's sensitive to it, it's probably at that threshold where it may make sense here locally to add a softener. The bad part of that is it adds some maintenance to folks, their homes or their operation and business, but at the end of the day, it's all kind of your own preference there. We're not near any kind of action level, but we're in that kind of middle zone there, the lower part of that middle zone. The cost associated with producing this report is always included in our annual budgets. So for the purposes, we are reporting the 2020 report in 2021. So it was included in the 21 operations budget. And as I mentioned, the cost there is significantly reduced since we've been permitted to do this electronically. And then finally, the recommendation this evening, this is a workshop, no action required out of the board, looking for feedback or comments. We're always, as a staff, looking for opportunities to improve this report or perhaps add additional components. And so I'm open for any questions or comments, and we will convey those to the staff for the next year for the 2021 report. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for stepping in and this presentation, which is always popular with me, and I'm assuming with the rest of the board as well. And so I'm going to open it up to director comments at this time.
I'll go first.
Thank you, Joe.
Brian, our boy Andy prepared this report. Good report. And board got the information that we needed to get. And I want you to thank Andy for me for a good report. Thanks a lot.
For those who don't know, Andy is our own water operations manager, Earl Smith. Joe Aguirre knows him as Andy.
I'm sorry, Earl Smith. Well, I've known him since he was, I think, 3.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be drinking a great Truckee water. I always get requests for it whenever I'm traveling. So thank you. You definitely have the confidence that we do have great tasting water up here. Yeah, thank Earl and the water crew for the great drinking water we have. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just kudos to staff once again for a good report and instilling the confidence in our consumers that our water is the highest quality. And also I do these for Tahoe City, and I just want to compliment staff on the quality of the report preparation. The state tells you all these things you have to include, and it's a horse race to figure out how to condense it all into a readable, distributable document. So I really appreciate staff's efforts, and it is a pleasant document to look at. So thank you.
Ditto. Yeah, the water is good. It has been good, and it continues to be very tasty. And we have an excellent confidence report there, Brian. So thank you and staff for all the work going into maintaining the system. So really appreciate it. Thanks.
Very good. I'm going to echo all of that. Thank you to staff for presenting all of this information to us in a way that is understandable and inspiring. And it's just, our water here is a really wonderful, wonderful gift. And it's just, this whole meeting has been about water. So this really reminds us how important it is for us to continue to focus on taking care of this just incredible resource that we have been blessed with up here. So thank you for providing this information to us. Yeah, so it was a workshop item, so we don't have to take any action right now except to say thank you. And we're super stoked to have a glass of water out of the sink.
Thank you for the feedback.
You are welcome.
Call for public comment?
Sure.
Did you call for public comment? I don't remember.
Because it was a workshop, but I'm happy to. Is there any public comments on this workshop this evening?
No, Madam President.
Thank you, Shauna. There we go. Which wraps it up nicely. Which brings us to our routine business this evening. Item number 16 is approval of the Treasurer's Report for May 2021. Anybody have any comments on the Treasurer's Report?
I'll move approval of the Treasurer's Report of the fund balances for the month ended February 2021.
Second motion.
Thank you, Joe. Donna, can we have a vote, please? A roll call vote.
Thank you. Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. you. And finally, item number 17, approval of the March 3rd, 2021, March 1st, 2021, April 1st, 2021, April 7th, 2021, April 19th, 2021, April 20th. We have been very busy. 2021, April 21st, 2021, and April 22nd and 23rd, 2021 minutes. Whew.
Wow, that was very nice, and I'll so moved per Krista's very long list.
Do we have a second? I'll second. Can we get a roll call vote, Shauna?
Thank you, Director Aguirre.
Yes.
Director Bender.
Yes.
Director Harris.
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
Yes.
President Finn?
Yes.
Thank you.
We
All
didn't
right.
pay the bills, though, did we?
Pardon me?
We didn't pay the bills yet.
I think that our new CFO is rolling that into our approval of the treasurer's report.
Oh, okay, in the report? Okay, good, good.
Yeah, so we
Steve
did
is
pay.
shaking his head.
I know they're already paid. I know they're already paid.
Well, item 16B on the agenda is a separate item for approval of the disbursements.
Oh, okay. Well then,
Joe,
let's do that. I skipped right over it. So I think now we have a motion to
Move to
approve.
pay the bills.
Excellent.
I'll second that.
Director Aguirre?
Yes.
Director Bender?
Yes.
Director Harris?
Yes.
Vice President Laliotis?
I think we're in technical difficulties.
President Finn?
Yes. There he is. Did we get a yay from Director Laliotis?
Sorry, yes, I went out for a minute there. Yes, to 16B.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, I believe we're going to be moving into closed session because we added that to the agenda. Steve, do you have, I saw you unmuted, so I assumed you were going to pipe up, but.
Yes, normally we would refer to the item as posted on the agenda. Since this item was added, we'll just state for the record that the board added this closed session, and the board will be going into closed session under Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators, the agency's negotiators are President Finn and Director Bender, and the unrepresented employees, the general manager. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve. So at this time, we will leave our open session and move into closed session, and I will see you all in the closed session. Bye. which I would do in the boardroom.
And you can always call Joe and say hi.
Yeah, it's true. It's so long when you're staring at a Zoom screen. It's like, okay. So we had no reportable action. We're back in open session, and I will officially adjourn this meeting of the Truckee-Donner Public Utility District. Thank you all for your contributions this evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.